What happens when you're just trying to survive your shift? For Nora Vance, a waitress drowning in medical debt, it was just another Tuesday. But then, 2 men walked in, and the sound of a gun hitting the counter changed everything. She stayed calm to save a life, not knowing a billionaire, Julian Thorne, was filming her. But what he did next wasn't a rescue. It was an explosion. He made her trauma go viral, and in the process, destroyed her life before he could save it. The digital 5 a.m. on the alarm clock was a digital scream. Nora Vance didn't hit snooze. She couldn't afford to. Snoozing was a luxury for people who weren't one medical bill away from drowning. She slid out of the bed, her feet hitting the cold linoleum of her studio apartment. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and the anxiety of the unpaid bills stacked on her tiny kitchen counter. The top one, a pale red envelope from the pediatric cardiology department at St. Jude's, seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Don't look at it, just move. Nora Vance was 26, but some mornings she felt 80. She was a ghost in her own life, a machine programmed for one purpose: survival. Not even her survival, but the survival of her 6-year-old son, Leo. Leo, who had her eyes but a laugh that was entirely his own. Leo, who was currently sub 200 miles away, living with her sister in a state with better medical care for his rare heart condition. A condition that required specialists, experimental procedures, and money. Always, always more money. She pulled on her uniform, a black polo shirt with the Cornerstone Diner logo, black slacks, and the non-slip shoes that were falling apart at the seams. She'd tried to fix them with superglue, but the sole was flapping again. Another day, another small humiliation. Her bus ride was a blur of rain-streaked windows and the low murmur of other tired people. She didn't look at them. She looked at her phone, at the picture of Leo from last week, holding up a drawing of a superhero. He was the brave one. Nora wasn't brave. She was just necessary. By 7 a.m. she was on the floor of the Cornerstone, a classic New Jersey diner that was always too hot or too cold. "Vance, you're on section 4, and try not to look like your dog just died," grunted Stan, her manager. Stan was a man whose personality seemed to be a direct reflection of the diner's grimy floor. Nora just nodded, her face settling into the neutral, pleasant mask she wore for customers. "Yes, Stan." She spent the next 4 hours in a flurry of more coffee, hash browns or home fries, and clearing plates. She was good at her job. She was invisible. She anticipated needs before they were spoken. She was a ghost who brought you eggs. Around 11:30 a.m., the pre-lunch lull, a man walked in alone. Nora didn't recognize him, but she clocked the details. His suit wasn't just nice, it was expensive, the kind of material that probably cost more than her rent. The watch on his wrist, a Patek Philippe, was worth more than her entire life's earnings. But he looked tired and annoyed. This was Julian Thorne. To the world, Julian Thorne was a name synonymous with disruption. His company, Nexus Dynamics, had revolutionized data processing. He was 38, worth an estimated $30 billion, and notoriously private. He hadn't just made it. He had redefined the very concept of it. To himself, Julian was in a data-driven hell. He'd just come from a 3-hour board meeting where he'd been forced to argue about the font size on a new app. He was suffocating in a world of yes-men and sanitized presentations. "Just drive," he'd snapped at his driver. "Pull over here." "Here, sir. This diner." "I want to see real people," Julian had muttered, stepping out of the Maybach and into the drizzle. Now, sitting in a cracked vinyl booth, he watched the waitress. Nora. He'd read her name tag. She moved with an efficiency that was almost beautiful, a liquid economy of motion. She didn't smile without reason. She was a closed system. He ordered black coffee and a BLT, and she just wrote it down, nodded, and left. He found it fascinating. She was the antithesis of his world. She was analog. She was real. He was so busy analyzing her behavioral patterns that he almost didn't register the bell on the diner door chiming at 11:42 a.m. But this time, the chime was followed by a sound that didn't belong, the metallic click-clack of a shotgun-wielding man locking the front door. A second man, younger, with a cheap ski mask pulled over his face, spun around, holding a small, trembling pistol. "Nobody move!" The first man, the one with the shotgun, barked. His voice was a gravel-filled command. "Wallets and phones on the table, now!" The diner, which had been humming with the sound of breakfast, sizzling and quiet chatter, went dead silent. The only sound was an elderly woman in booth 3, Mrs. Gable, who let out a small, terrified whimper. Julian Thorne's heart hammered in his chest. His first thought was threat assessment. His second was liability. His third, as he saw the gunman's eyes dart toward the whimper, was a cold, sharp spike of actual fear. But then he looked at the waitress. Nora. She hadn't moved. She was standing between his booth and Mrs. Gable's, a pot of coffee still in her hand. Her face was pale, but her expression was unchanged. That neutral, pleasant, professional mask was still in place. It was the most terrifyingly calm thing Julian had ever seen. The man with the shotgun, let's call him Alex, was the leader. He was big, wired on cheap adrenaline, and enjoying the power. The second man, Mickey, was a mess. The pistol in his hand was visibly shaking. He was the weak link. "I said, phones and wallets, now!" Alex roared, racking the shotgun for emphasis. People fumbled. A man in a business suit frantically threw his wallet on the table. A young couple huddled together, crying. Mrs. Gable, the elderly woman, was fumbling with the clasp on her old-fashioned purse, her liver-spotted hands shaking violently. I can't. Please. Shut up, Grandma, Alex snarled, taking a step toward her booth. "No," a voice said. It wasn't loud, it wasn't defiant, it was just level. It was Nora. She still held the coffee pot. She hadn't moved. Alex, Mickey, and even Julian Thorne all turned to look at her. "Please don't yell at her," Nora said, her voice the same one she used to ask, "White or wheat?" "She's frightened. We'll do exactly what you want. We just need a moment." Alex was so taken aback by the lack of screaming that he actually hesitated. "What did you say to me?" Nora slowly placed the coffee pot on the counter. She raised her hands, palms open, in the universal gesture of no threat. "My name is Nora," she said, speaking to Mickey, the one with the trembling pistol. His eyes were wide and panicked above the mask. He was the one who might accidentally pull the trigger. "You look nervous. That's okay. We're all nervous. Just tell us what you need us to do, and we'll do it. No one here wants to be a hero." Julian Thorne watched, frozen. This was impossible. This wasn't a human reaction. This was de-escalation. This was strategic. He'd seen hostage negotiators on a corporate retreat do this. She was separating the two robbers, placating the leader while managing the anxiety of the volatile one. Where did she learn this? He thought. Just the money, Mickey stammered, his pistol wavering. And the phones, all the phones. Okay, Nora said, nodding slowly. The money is in the register. Stan, my manager, is in the back. I can get the money for you. It's not a problem. Right, Stan? There was a muffled yes from the kitchen, where Stan was presumably hiding in the walk-in freezer. See? Nora said. Easy, and we'll get the phones. Mrs. Gable, she said, her voice softening. It's all right. Just slide your purse onto the seat, honey. We'll take care of it. She was a conductor, bringing the entire chaotic orchestra of terror down to a manageable tempo. Alex, furious at losing control of the narrative, shoved his shotgun toward Nora. You stop talking. You, get the phones. In a bag, now. Okay, Nora said. She grabbed a plastic "thank you" bag from under the counter. She walked, slowly and deliberately, from booth to booth. Julian Thorne watched her approach. His phone was on the table. It was his life. His $30 billion empire ran through that slab of glass and metal. He felt a primal urge to protect it, to hide it. Nora's eyes met his. They were dark, exhausted, but held an impossible depth of resolve. There was no plea in them. There was no "help me." There was just a silent, shared understanding. Don't be stupid. Julian slid the phone across the table. Nora picked it up, her fingers brushing his, and he was shocked to feel that her hand was ice cold. She wasn't calm. She was paralyzed with terror and forcing her body to move anyway. It was the most profound display of courage he had ever witnessed. She collected all the phones and wallets and handed the bag to Alex. The register is right here, she said. Mickey, get the register, Alex commanded. Mickey fumbled with the buttons, spilling coins. Nora just stood there, hands by her sides, watching, waiting. Julian, meanwhile, had slipped his hand into his suit pocket. He wasn't reaching for a weapon. He was a tech billionaire. His weapon was data. He had a secondary phone, a small encrypted burner he kept for emergencies. His thumb, moving with practiced silence, found the camera app. He wasn't filming the robbers. That was evidence, and he was smart enough to know it was also a death wish if he was caught. He angled the phone slightly upward from his pocket. He was filming Nora. He was capturing the rigid line of her back, the way her hands were clenched into white-knuckled fists at her sides, the only sign of her terror, the absolute, steady set of her jaw. He was recording the data of her bravery. That's it. Let's go, Alex said, grabbing the bag of phones and the cash. The back door, Mickey squeaked. No, the front. No sirens yet. Move. They backed out of the diner, shotgun aimed at the room, and were gone. For 10 full seconds, the diner was a vacuum. No one breathed. No one moved. The only sound was the Sizzall griddle, still hissing. Then Mrs. Gable began to sob, a high-topped, wailing sound. The man in the suit put his head in his hands. And Nora, the woman who had been a pillar of impossible calm, looked at the coffee pot she had set down. Her knees buckled. She didn't fall. She folded, sinking to the grimy diner floor, and pressed her forehead against the cool linoleum. She didn't make a sound. She just broke. Julian Thorne's thumb stopped the recording. He had captured it all, the strength, and now the shatter. He had the data. My God, he thought, what do I do with it? The wail of sirens, late but inevitable, filled the air. The arrival of the police turned the diner from a pocket of shared trauma into a chaotic, bureaucratic mess. Nora was sitting in a booth, wrapped in a coarse, red-checkered blanket that smelled of fry oil. A police officer, a kind-faced woman named Officer Chen, was asking her questions. Can you describe them, honey? One was tall, Nora whispered. Her voice was gone. It was a dry rasp. He had a shotgun. The other one was scared. He was so scared. Julian watched from his own booth as she gave her statement. He was struck by her immediate empathy for the robber. She was analyzing the situation even in her description. Officer Chen sighed. You were very brave, Nora. You probably saved that older woman's life, yelling at them like that. You refocused them. That was smart. Nora just stared at the table. "I have a son," she said, as if it explained everything. I have to pick up my next shift. Can I go?" The officer looked at her, baffled. "The diner's closed. This is a crime scene. You should go home. Rest." "I can't," Nora said, a new, sharper panic entering her voice. "If I don't take the shift, Stan won't. I need the hours." Julian felt something cold and unfamiliar twist in his gut. He was a man who understood transactions. Everything was a negotiation. "You want a $10 billion valuation. Show me the data. You want a raise. Show me your metrics. What was the metric for this?" He had given his own statement, a clipped, efficient summary. He provided his name, Julian Thorne, which had earned a raised eyebrow from the detective, but he had requested privacy. He was just another witness. He watched Stan, the manager, finally emerge from the walk-in, blustering about lost revenue and these animals. He didn't once ask Nora if she was okay. Julian stood up. His driver was waiting outside, having been in a silent panic for 20 minutes. The police were done with him. He walked over to the counter, near where Nora was still sitting, her face buried in her hands. He didn't know what to say. "Good job," felt obscene. "Are you okay?" was a stupid question. So he fell back on what he knew, a transaction. He pulled out his black, carbon fiber wallet. He took out all the cash he had. It wasn't much, a few $100s. An afterthought. He'd come to the diner for realism, after all. He looked at the bill for his BLT and coffee. 14 ounces for $50. He took out a pen. He wrote on the back of the check, "Your courage was remarkable." It was a stupid, sterile sentence. He hated it. He crumpled the check, tossed it. He pulled out a new one. He didn't write anything. He just took his business card, a stark white card with nothing but his name and the Nexus Dynamics logo, and a paper clip. He clipped the card to a stack of... He didn't even know. He just pulled out his checkbook, a relic he rarely used. He wrote the check to Nora Vance. He filled in the amount line, $10,000. It was nothing. It was an impulse. It was what he'd spend on a bottle of wine without thinking. He folded it and slid it, along with the card, onto the counter where she'd find it when she finally stood up. He walked out of the diner, the sirens, the smell of burnt coffee, and the sight of Nora's trembling back searing itself into his mind. He got into the Maybach. The silence of the leather-clad interior was deafening. "Sir, are you all right?" his driver asked. "Pull up everything you can find on the Cornerstone Diner in Clifton, New Jersey," Julian said, his voice flat. "And then, I want you to get me the private number for the CEO of Twitter, the head of global news at Google, and my personal PR team. Now." He looked down at his phone, at the 32-second video file he had recorded. The strength, the shatter. It wasn't just data, it was a story. And Julian Thorne, a man who built empires on stories told by data, was about to tell the biggest one of his life. Nora didn't find the check for 2 hours. After the police left, she'd been on autopilot, scrubbing, cleaning, trying to erase the violation of the space. It was only when Stan, seeing the check and the black card, had snatched it up, that she even registered it. A business card? And holy hell, Nora, is this $10,000? Nora stared at it. Julian Thorne. Nexus Dynamics. The name meant nothing to her. The number 10,000 meant everything. It was 2 months of Leo's specialized care. It was a security deposit on a better apartment. It was a breath. She took the check, her hand shaking, and went home. She locked her door, slid down against it, and cried for the first time. She cried from fear, from relief, and from a deep, bone-grinding exhaustion. She fell asleep right there on the floor, the check clutched in her hand. She woke up 12 hours later to the sound of a hurricane. Her phone, which she'd retrieved from the police, was on her nightstand. It wasn't just buzzing. It was a solid, vibrating against the wood shriek. She picked it up. 342 text messages, 98 missed calls, 1,000 plus notifications from apps she barely used. Her best friend, Sarah, another waitress from a different restaurant. "OMG, Nora, pick up! Are you seeing this?" Her sister, "Nora, call me. The news is here. They're at my house. What is going on?" She opened her text messages and a link to Twitter. Her world ended. Julian Thorne had not just posted the video. He had launched a campaign. His post, sent at 4 a.m. from his verified account with 15 million followers, read, "Today I went to the Cornerstone Diner in NJ. I also witnessed an armed robbery." But that's not the story. The story is Nora Vance, old tag that was not her real tag. I recorded this 30-second clip after the robbers left. This is the footage of a woman, a minimum wage waitress, who just protected a diner full of strangers, including myself. She did it with a calm that I have never seen in any boardroom. Then, when the danger was past, she collapsed. Video, a 32-second, high-definition clip, clearly filmed from a low angle. It shows Nora, her back to the camera, sinking to the floor. It captures her shoulders shaking in silent sobs. It's intimate, devastating, and undeniable. We have a culture that celebrates entrepreneurs and athletes. We've forgotten the people who show up every day for almost nothing. Nora Vance is a hero. I gave her a $10,000 tip, but it felt like an insult. So, I'm launching the Vance Fund for Invisible Heroes. My company, Nexus Dynamics, is seeding it with $10 million effective immediately to provide grants, mental health support, and debt relief for service industry workers who are victims of crime or personal hardship. This is Nora. She deserves more than just a tip. She deserves to be seen. It was a masterpiece of public relations. It was empathetic. It was actionable. It had a hero, a villain, the robbers, and a call to action. It had been retweeted 2 million times. It was the #1 story on Google News, Apple News, and was being played on a loop on CNN, MSNBC, and Fox. The angel waitress. Billionaire's viral hero. Nora stared at the video of herself, breaking down on a dirty floor. He had filmed her. He had filmed her at her most vulnerable, most broken moment, and he had broadcast it to the world. This wasn't a rescue. This was a violation. The $10,000 check felt like acid in her hand. He hadn't just given her money. He had bought her trauma and turned it into a commercial for his own generosity. Her phone rang again. It was Stan. "Nora," he said, and his voice was cold. "Stan, I'm so sorry. I just woke up. I'll be in for my shift." "No, you won't," he said flatly. "Don't come in. You're fired." Nora's blood turned to ice. "What? Fired? Why?" "Stan, I saved people." "You exposed us," he hissed, his voice low. "I've got news vans in my parking lot. I've got the health department on the line because your billionaire buddy's video showed a mop bucket in the background. And that's not the worst of it. The worst of it. I got a call from the police, Nora. The robbers, the ones you were so calm with. They got away. And now, thanks to Mr. Thorne, your face, your name, and the diner you work at are all over the goddamn planet. What do you think happens when they see that? When they see the $10 million of Vance Fund? They're not going to go after him, Nora. They're going to think you got the money. They're going to come for you. The phone slipped from Nora's hand. He was right. Julian Thorne, in his glass tower, had painted a $10 million target on her back. He hadn't saved her. He had just handed the robbers a map. Julian Thorne was in his penthouse office, 80 floors above Manhattan, watching the Vance Fund donations pour in. It was a staggering success. Another $5 million in public donations had come in since 9 a.m. His PR team was calling it the most successful philanthropic launch in a decade. He was a hero. Mr. Thorne, his assistant, a sharp woman named Evelyn, interrupted his flow. "We have a problem." "The fund is a problem? It's literally printing goodwill," Julian said, not looking up from the data stream. "No, sir. Nora Vance is the problem, or rather, our effect on Nora Vance." She turned on the large monitor in his office. It wasn't a fawning CNN report. It was a grainy local news feed from New Jersey. Cornerstone Diner, facing backlash, has fired the Waitress hero. Julian's head snapped up. "What?" The report was brutal. It showed a flustered Stan trying to cover a news camera with his hand. "No comment. She's a liability." The story had already turned. The internet, a beast that needs a constant supply of heroes and villains, had a new target. A cancel Cornerstone was trending. "And it gets worse," Evelyn said, her face grim. "The online forums, 4chan, Reddit, they've found her. They have her address." "Find her," Julian said, standing up so fast his chair flew back. Get her security. Now, bring her here." "We can't," Evelyn said. "She's gone." "What do you mean, gone? You can't just lose a person. Track her phone." "She turned it off an hour ago. She cashed your $10,000 check at a check cashing place in Newark that took 10%, and vanished." Julian stared at the screen, the video of Nora collapsing. His video. "She's not running to safety," Julian said, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. "She's running from me." He had seen her as a hero. He had seen her as a symbol. He had never, for 1 second, seen her as a person. A person who had just been robbed at gunpoint. A person who was terrified. A person whose manager had just told the world, via a hot mic, "She's probably in on it. Why else would she be so calm?" The narrative was flipping. The angel waitress was now, in the dark corners of the web, the accomplice waitress. "Sir," Evelyn said softly, "the robbers are still out there, and we just told them who to blame. What are your orders?" Julian Thorne, the man who could predict stock market fluctuations and data migration patterns years in advance, had no idea. He had created a monster, and it was hunting the one person he was trying to help. "Get Marcus," Julian said, his voice quiet and cold. Evelyn's eyes widened. Marcus was Julian's fixer, the man who handled delicate corporate extractions. "Find her," Julian commanded. "Not with security, not with PR, with discretion. I don't care what it costs. Find her, and find out everything about her. I made this mess. I will fix it." Nora Vance was a ghost. She had taken the cash, minus the predatory fee, and bought a burner phone from a 7-Eleven. She'd taken a bus to a different town, paid cash for a room at a rundown motel called the Starlight, and locked the door. She sat on the stiff polyester bedspread that smelled like bleach and cigarettes, and she tried to think. Leo. Her sister was frantic. "Nora, what is going on? There are men in suits outside my house. They're not bad," Nora tried to explain, her voice shaking. "They're reporters, I think. Just don't talk to them. Don't tell them where I am. Don't tell anyone." "Nora, what did you do?" "I just went to work," Nora whispered, and hung up. She turned on the motel television. Her face was everywhere. But it wasn't her. It was a character. Nora Vance, the waitress who... The news was now focused on her being missing. They were interviewing friends. A girl she hadn't spoken to since high school was on Good Morning America, talking about Nora's troubled past. It was a dissection. She felt like prey. Julian Thorne had been the lion, and the media were the jackals, and they were all ripping her life to shreds, fighting over the scraps. Meanwhile, Julian was in his own war room. "Her name is Nora Vance," Marcus reported, his voice a gravelly monotone. Marcus was a former intelligence officer who found corporate work relaxing. "She has a son," he continued, placing a file on Julian's desk. "Leo Vance, 6 years old, lives with her sister, Amelia, in Ohio." He clicked a remote, and a picture of a smiling, gap-toothed boy appeared on the monitor. "He has hypoplastic left heart syndrome," Marcus said. "He's been on a transplant list for a year, but his condition is degrading. He needs a bridge-to-transplant surgery, a VAD implant. The sister's insurance won't cover it. It's experimental. Cost is $750,000, payable in advance." Julian stared at the picture of the boy. "I have a son." That's what she'd said. "So her calm," Julian breathed. It was, she couldn't afford to die." "She couldn't afford to get shot," Marcus corrected. "A gunshot wound, even a minor one, means missed work. Missed work means no tips. No tips means Leo doesn't get his medicine. She wasn't being brave, Mr. Thorne. She was just a mother. Every dollar she makes is split. Half for her rent, half for the Leo fund she has in a savings account." Marcus clicked to the next slide, a bank statement. The Leo fund contained $4,120.34. The $10,000 check she cashed. She tried to wire $9,000 of it to her sister. The wire was flagged due to the suspicious nature of the check-cashing activity and her name being on a national interest news story. "The money is frozen." Julian felt sick. "So," Marcus summarized, "she's been fired. Her tip is frozen. Her son is sick. The robbers are still at large, and the media, which you activated, is painting her as either a saint or a co-conspirator. She's currently hiding in the Starlight Motel, room 112, in Teterboro. She paid cash for 3 nights. She has $124 left in her pocket." Julian stood up. "Have the jet ready." "Sir, not the jet. The helicopter. It's faster." "What are your orders for the team?" Marcus asked. "Do we extract her?" "No," Julian said, grabbing his coat. "You're not going. I am." "Sir, that is a tactical nightmare. You, in a no-tell motel. The press would—" "I don't care," Julian snapped. "I sent the lightning. I'm going to stand in the rain. Send the team to the sister's house, not to scare her, to protect her, and get the head of St. Jude's in Ohio on my line. The Leo Fund is about to get a new donation." "And what about the robbers?" "Oh," Julian said, his eyes turning to flint. "You can send a different team for them." The Starlight Motel was where Hope went to die. The S on the neon sign was long dead, fizzling in the downpour, so it just read Tarlight. The rain wasn't just falling, it was an assault, sheeting down and turning the cracked pavement of the parking lot into a black, churning mirror. Julian Thorne got out of the discreet black sedan. He'd overruled his security detail, who were now posted a block away, watching him with mounting horror on a thermal feed. This was, as his head of security had put it, tactically insane. Julian didn't care. He was a man who lived 80 floors above the ground. This was ground zero. The smell of wet asphalt, mold and desperation clung to the air. He felt a visceral disgust, not for the place, but for himself, for the fact that he'd forced her here. His $5,000 suit felt like a costume, a ridiculous beacon of privilege in a place that privilege had forgotten. He found room 112. The paint on the door was peeling in long, sad strips. He raised his hand, a hand that signed billion-dollar contracts, and knocked. The sound was dull and flat. Inside, Nora's heart didn't just stop. It seized. It was 10 p.m. She had $124 and a burner phone that knew no numbers. No one knew she was here. No one. A jolt of pure, white-hot adrenaline shot through her. It was them, the robbers. They'd found her. They'd seen the news. They knew her name. They knew she was the Vance Fund, and they were here to finish it. Or maybe it was Stan, come to scream at her. Or the police, convinced she was an accomplice. Every possibility was a new monster. She scrambled off the bed, her hand searching for a weapon. There was nothing. The lamp was bolted to the table. She grabbed the only thing she could, the Gideon's Bible from the nightstand drawer. It was heavy. She held it like a brick. "Who is it?" she whispered, her voice a reedy, terrified rasp. She pressed her eye to the peephole, but it was warped and water-streaked. She could only see a dark shape. "Miss Vance? Nora?" The voice was not what she expected. It wasn't a gravelly threat. It was deep, calm, cultivated. It was the voice of the other side of the world, a voice that belonged in boardrooms, not at the door of a Fortitude-night motel. "My name is Julian Thorne." Nora felt the blood drain from her face, leaving her lightheaded. The Bible suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Him, the man who had started it all, the architect of her destruction. The lion had followed the jackals to her hiding place. She backed away from the door, a small, strangled sound in her throat. "Go away!" she yelled, her voice cracking. "Go away, or I'll call the police." A bitter laugh escaped her. On what phone? With what credibility? "Please, Miss Vance." His voice came through the cheap wood. He sounded uncomfortable. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to talk. We need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about," she screamed, the hysteria rising. "Haven't you done enough? You filmed me. You filmed me breaking down and you put it on the internet for everyone to see. You told the men who tried to kill me my name. You got me fired. You ruined my life. And now you want to talk?" There was a long, heavy silence on the other side of the door. The only sound was the drumming of the rain, like 1,000 fingers tapping. "Get out, get out, get out." When he spoke again, his voice was different. The polished CEO was gone. He just sounded tired. "Yes, all of that. It's all true. I move fast. I see a problem. I solve it. I saw a hero, and I acted. I turned you into a symbol. I never once considered the consequences for the person. That wasn't just a mistake, Nora. It was arrogant, and it was cruel." She was still pressed against the far wall, the Bible in her hand, shaking. He was admitting it. It was a confession. "So you're sorry," she spat, her tears a mixture of rage and fear. "You're sorry and you've ruined my life. Great. Apology accepted. Now go away." "I can't," Julian said, and a new urgency entered his voice. "I can't go away because my solution has put you in incredible danger. The men who robbed the diner, Alex and Mickey, are still out there. And my post, my stupid, arrogant post, has made you the most famous and most vulnerable person in the state. They're looking for you. The media is looking for you. You're not safe here. And you're safe." She laughed, a wild, broken sound. "You're the safest person here? You, the man who brought the whole storm down on me? You're going to solve that, too? Hide me in your golden tower?" "No," he said. "I'm going to offer you a job. But first, before any of that, I need you to know. I know about Leo." The name hit the air and seemed to suck all the oxygen from the room. Nora dropped the Bible. It hit the threadbare carpet with a dull, final thud. Her legs gave out, and she slid down the wall. What about Leo? She whispered, her hands clawing at the wall. This was a new, deeper violation. I know he's sick. Julian's voice was soft now, insistent. Hypoplastic left heart syndrome. I know he needs surgery, a VAD implant. I know it costs $750,000. I know your tip is frozen because of the mess I made. I spoke to Dr. Eris at the Cleveland Clinic an hour ago. It's paid, all of it. The surgery is scheduled for Friday morning. Nora just broke. She folded in on herself, pressing her face to her knees, and a sob she'd been holding back for a week, for years, was ripped from her. It was a sound of absolute despair and absolute, agonizing relief. He'd paid it. Just like that. A number that was an impossible, mountain-sized weight that she pushed up a hill every single day. And he had just paid it. Why? She wept, her voice muffled. Why would you, why? Because the Vance Fund was never about me, Nora, he said through the door. It was supposed to be about you, and I ruined it. I made it about me. I want to fix that. I'm not here to save you. You've already saved yourself. I'm here to undo what I did. Please, open the door. I'm not here with cameras. I'm not here with PR. I'm just here to talk. As a person. Please. She sat there for a full minute, her body still heaving, the timeline of her life splitting into a before and after this very moment. He had bought her son's life. What did that buy him? Her legs felt like jelly. She used the wall to pull herself up. Slowly, her hand shaking so hard she could barely grip the knob, she walked to the door. She unhooked the flimsy chain, the clink of the metal sounding impossibly loud. She pulled the door open. Julian Thorne looked smaller than he did on television. He was soaked. The rain was running off his expensive coat. His hair was plastered to his head. He wasn't a billionaire. He was just a wet, tired man in a nice suit, looking profoundly guilty. He'd been expecting to see a victim. But the woman in front of him, her face pale and stained with tears, her eyes red-rimmed but burning with a fierce, cold fire. This was not a victim. This was a survivor. You really paid it? She asked, her voice a child's. Yes, he said, his own voice hoarse. It's done. He's safe. Your sister Amelia knows. They're prepping him right now. Nora looked at him, and all the rage, all the terror just evaporated. It left a vacuum. She felt nothing but a bone-deep exhaustion. What do you want from me, Mr. Thorne? She asked, her voice flat. There's nothing left. That's where you're wrong, he said, taking a small step into the room, out of the rain. I want you to run the Vance Fund. She blinked, wiping her nose on her sleeve. What? That's insane. I'm a waitress. You were a waitress, he corrected, his voice finding its old authority, but now tempered with respect. You're the woman who de-escalated a violent robbery to protect strangers while carrying a financial burden that would crush most people. You managed a crisis. You assessed a threat. You handled the most volatile assets, the two gunmen, and you did it with empathy as a tactic. I run a $100 billion company, Nora. My job is to find the best people, and I have never, in my life, seen anyone with your resolve. He looked around the tiny, squalid room. I don't need a symbol. I need a leader. I need someone who understands what it's like to be in this room. The fund has $15 million in it. I have no idea what to do with it, but you do. You're not the face of the fund, Nora. You're its CEO, if you'll have the job. Nora stared at him, her mind struggling to catch up. CEO. A job. He wasn't offering a handout. He was offering a promotion, from the diner floor to an office. It was madness. I don't know how to be a CEO, she whispered, the word sounding stupid. Neither did I when I started, Julian said, offering a small, sad smile. You'll learn. You'll have my resources, my team, my jet if you want it. But you have the why. That's the part I'm missing. That's the part the algorithm can't solve. He held out a hand. I can't take back the video. I can't make you unknown again. I can't give you back your quiet life. But I can give you the power to control the story. And to help people. Really help them. Starting with yourself. Nora looked at his hand. It was a hand that built skyscrapers and moved markets. She thought of Leo. Safe. In a hospital. Getting the care he needed. She thought of the Leo Fund, with $4,820.34 in it. She was no longer a ghost. She was no longer prey. He had given her son a future. And now, he was giving her one. She put her small, work-roughened hand into his. It was warm. Okay, she said, and her voice didn't shake. Okay, Mr. Thorne, what do I do first? First, Julian said, a small, genuine smile finally touching his lips as he gripped her hand. We call you by your new title. Second, we get you the hell out of this motel. And third, we're going to need a bigger fund. The ballroom at the New York Plaza was a far cry from the Cornerstone Diner. It was suffocating in a different way, not with the smell of old coffee, but with the silent, predatory energy of the international press. Hundreds of cameras flashed, a galaxy of tiny, blinding suns, all aimed at the simple wooden podium. Julian Thorne, for the first time in his public life, was not the main event. He stood off to the side, behind the heavy blue curtain, deliberately in the wings. He had offered to introduce her, and she had politely, but firmly, refused. I can't be presented by you, Mr. Thorne, she'd said. I have to walk out on my own. A hush fell as Nora Vance walked onto the stage. She was not in a power suit. She was in a simple, dark blue sheath dress that she'd bought from a department store. The first new piece of clothing she'd bought in 3 years. Her hair was pulled back. She looked professional, composed, and to anyone who really looked, still a little tired. She was a mother who had just flown in from her son's hospital bedside. She gripped the sides of the podium, her knuckles white, and took a breath. Good morning, she said. Her voice, unamplified, would have been a waitress's. In the microphone, it was clear, strong, and resonated through the cavernous room. My name is Nora Vance. You know my name because, a week ago, a video of me at my lowest moment was viewed by 50 million people. You saw me on a diner floor, broken, after 2 men threatened my life with a shotgun. The room was dead silent. Reporters who had come expecting a story of philanthropic triumph were furiously deleting their pre-written intros. The headlines called me the angel waitress. A hero. I'm not. I'm a mother. And that day, I was just a woman trying to survive her shift. I did what I had to do to protect my customers, yes. But mostly, I did what I had to do to get home to my son. I stayed calm because I couldn't afford a hospital bill, and I definitely couldn't afford to die. She looked directly into the main camera, the one broadcasting live. Mr. Thorne did something impulsive, she said, not looking toward the wing. He saw a story, and he told it. He exposed me. He filmed my trauma, and he made it go viral. And in doing so, he unintentionally put my life in more danger, cost me my job, and painted a target on my back. A wave of murmurs and frantic typing. Julian in the wings winced. This was true. This was the steel she'd hidden. But, she continued, the headlines you all wrote, Billionaire saves Waitress. They were wrong. He didn't save me. My son's doctors saved him. Mr. Thorne's check. It just opened the door. What's happened since? In the quiet conversations after the cameras were off. That is the story. She finally glanced at Julian, a quick, almost imperceptible nod. He felt it like a physical force. Mr. Thorne and I have been talking, and we realized the Vance fund was flawed. It was a rich man's solution to a poor woman's problem. It was pity, and the people who serve your food, drive your cars, and clean your offices. We don't need your pity. We need your respect. We need better policies. She stood up straight. The fear was gone. This was her ground. So today, we are relaunching. The fund is now the Service and Safety Fund. I am its first executive director. This time, the flashbulbs were a storm. Our first mission is not just to give handouts, it's to change policy. Our first action is lobbying for the Safe Shift Act, a 3-point bill requiring mandatory paid de-escalation training, on-site panic buttons connected directly to emergency services, and trauma-informed mental health care, free of charge, for any service industry worker who is a victim of a violent crime on the job. She was brilliant. She was natural. She was real. I'm not a hero, she concluded, her voice thick with conviction. I'm a mother. I'm a worker. And for my entire adult life, I was invisible. We, the people who make your world run, are all just one medical bill, one missed shift, one violent encounter away from disaster. Mr. Thorne's video. It made one of us visible. My new job, my new life, is to make all of us visible. She stepped back from the podium. For a full 3 seconds, there was silence. Then, a few reporters in the back started to applaud. It was a breach of protocol, but it was undeniable. The applause became thunderous. The story went viral again. But this time, it was the right story. From hero to CEO, Nora Vance takes control of Thorne Fund. Not a victim, a voice. Waitress launches national safety campaign. Billionaire steps aside. Why Julian Thorne is taking orders from Nora Vance. Nora's first act as director was to fly to Ohio. There were no cameras. Julian had provided a private jet, and she'd sat in the plush leather seat, clutching the armrests, feeling like she was in a different universe. When she walked into Leo's hospital room, her sister, Amelia, just burst into tears and hugged her. Nora, I saw you on the news. You. Nora just nodded, her own eyes flooding, and walked to the bed. Leo was asleep, his small chest rising and falling with a peaceful, steady rhythm she hadn't seen in years. The VAD implant, the bridge to his new heart, was already working. He was safe. She put her head down on his blanket, and finally, let go. The new dynamic between Nora and Julian was a strange one. He was technically her boss, but in practice, he was a student. 2 weeks later, in a conference room at the Service and Safety Fund's new headquarters, a modest office, not a glass tower at Nora's insistence, they reviewed the first grant applications. "This is inefficient," Julian said, looking at the piles of paper. "My team can build an algorithm. We set parameters, financial need, severity of incident, employment verification, and it will auto-approve the top 80%. "It will miss her," Nora said, tapping a file. Julian picked it up. The applicant was a 60-year-old bus driver in Detroit. He'd been assaulted. His application was incomplete. His financial records were a mess. "He's a red flag, Nora," Julian said. "The algorithm would dump this." "The algorithm doesn't know he's dyslexic," Nora said softly. "The algorithm doesn't know his financial records are a mess because his wife, who handled the bills, died of COVID, And he's been sleeping in his car, I know, because I called him. Julian looked at her. He looked at the file. He pushed his laptop away. Show me. Show me how you do it. It was a new kind of data. And the robbers? The different team Julian had sent had, in fact, been data miners. They hadn't looked for two men in masks. They had tracked the digital footprints of the stolen items, the phones, the one stolen credit card, the wallets. They were fenced for pennies on the dollar. The digital breadcrumbs led to a pawn shop, which led to a name, which led to an address. But the real break came from Mickey. The younger, terrified robber had been hiding out, watching the news, watching his face, or mask, on a loop. He saw the angel waitress stories. Then he saw the press conference. He watched Nora Vance, the woman he'd pointed a gun at, stand up and talk, not about him, not about revenge or jail, but about de-escalation training, about mental health care. When the police, acting on the data team's tip, finally kicked in his door, he was just sitting on his couch, hands on his head. He confessed instantly. His partner, Alex, was found 2 days later, trying to buy a bus ticket. Mickey's public defender told Nora, through official channels, that his client was deeply remorseful. He said he never realized the people he was robbing were, people. Like him. He said he saw you on TV, and you weren't asking for them to be locked up. You were asking for help. He wants you to know that. He says he's glad he was caught. Nora hung up the phone, stunned. Her impossible, desperate act of empathy had, in the end, been the very thing that closed the case. She was no longer a ghost. She was no longer a symbol. She was a CEO. She was a mother. And for the first time in her life, she was no longer invisible. And that's the incredible true story of Nora Vance and Julian Thorne. It's a story that reminds us that the bravest people aren't the ones who feel no fear. They're the ones who show up, do the work, and stay standing despite the fear. Nora's life was changed not just by a video, but by what she chose to do after the world was watching. She turned her trauma into a mission to protect the millions of invisible heroes who walk among us every single day. What do you think of Julian Thorne's actions? Was he right to post the video, even if the outcome was good? Or was it a total invasion of privacy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you were moved by Nora's story, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true life stories that will inspire and shock you. Thank you for watching. And as Nora would say, be kind to the people who serve you. You never know the battle they're fighting.